Welcome back, boys and girls. It's week 1 of the college football season, even though it's week 2 of the week, but it was week 0. And I have no idea which week of the Carla and Crappy show this is. And I'm Carla. I'm hoping you can help me out with this.
Well, and then we did a summer show. So is this really week 3 or is this week 2?
I don't know.
Math is hard.
Math is hard. Math is confusing. This is the start of Big Boy Football Week. This is the first time that we've returned to what was the show's not really original format, but what has been the show's format for several years, which is you and me talking about stuff, and then there's AJ, who's going to take us through the fun and exciting world of the Group of 5. But so I don't know what I will.
And we both have beverages.
We both have beverages. That's the first for you in
quite a while. Yes,
in a little bit. I don't know, but I mean, it doesn't matter, right? There was football last weekend. I didn't get to see a whole lot other than watching Vandy in Hawaii after I got finished with birthday party stuff that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
How much did you watch? What did you see?
Well, I'm not sure what the more surprising outcome of the weekend was. The fact that Nebraska just kind of totally fell apart in the second half of that game against Northwestern.
Oh boy.
Or the fact that Vanderbilt hung 63 on Hawaii.
Yes, and that's and I confession, I did not stay up for that whole game.
I didn't either. Sorry, AJ. We love you, but yeah, Mama's got to go to bed.
I was watching on an iPad in an Airbnb in Cleveland, and I thought, as you're getting close to halftime, it's like, well, this is done. I'm going to sleep.
Yeah, I went to bed at 21:10. I was like, yeah, they got this under control. I'm like, I'm going to sleep now.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we had it on all day. It was almost frustrating to watch college football on Saturday because, like, I was involved in the Northwestern Nebraska game, but then there wasn't a ton of must-see games in the in-between slot between. I mean, that game kicked at 11:30 in the morning here, right? So it was 12:30 Eastern, but 11:30 here. Right. And the Hawaii Vanderbilt game didn't kick until 9:30 Central. So there was like this huge gap, like during the normal primetime window,
right,
where there wasn't really anything great to watch. And that was frustrating, you know? We get that this weekend.
Oh yeah. In spades. The games that are coming up this weekend, they're not all ranked unranked or anything like that, but there's a really interesting slate of stuff coming up. Is there one thing that really stuck with you from last weekend?
Gosh, Nebraska. Scott Frost has to like really be feeling it right now. Because and here's the thing, like when watching the beginning of that game, I actually tweeted this after I saw Nebraska's first offensive possession.
Yeah.
And Casey Thompson and Mark Whipple, that combination looked like it was going to be fantastic. I mean, it was a methodical first drive. Scored 6. I mean, it was beautiful. It was a beautifully executed drive. And it was like, okay, Nebraska, you're going to be kind of fun to watch this year. And then it just all kind of fell apart. Northwestern hung around. And I think it's the way in which Nebraska lost.
Yeah.
I think is what's going to haunt them about that loss. Not necessarily the loss to Northwestern, because it's an even numbered years. As somebody pointed out on Twitter, like that, the Northwestern has really good years on even numbered years. Yeah. So okay, let's count that worth a grain of salt. But the fact that it was just kind of an utter collapse, and I mean, Casey Thompson didn't look like he knew what he was doing in the second half, and that's just bizarre.
Yeah,
it's just bizarre. So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing. And then heck, with the Vanderbilt thing, is this an indication of Vanderbilt might actually be a bowl team this year?
No.
Or is Hawaii that bad?
I that feels like more of the latter. I mean, there's certainly a talent difference there that you would expect. A difficult to recruit for program in the Mountain West versus the egghead school in the SEC. It's still in the SEC, and maybe they're not competitive like in their conference, But you're still that there's the discrepancy in talent those schools are seeing. It's probably substantial, I would think.
But could Vandy go 6-6? Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, after seeing what I saw, could Vandy go 6-6 and make a sub-rated bowl game? Maybe it's possible this year.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a huge win for Vandy and Clark Lee at this point.
Absolutely.
So fun to watch.
The thing about Nebraska, and I did not get to see any of that game. I've seen a little bit of replay stuff and plenty of video of Scott Frost looking confused on the sidelines. This is it really struck me. This is a cautionary tale for Timmy Chang, who is the new head coach at Hawaii. And he was AJ sort of outlined this last week, but he was sort of maybe not quite ready. Who knows if he's ready to be a head coach, but he was being groomed. He's going to be a head coach at some point down the line. But he was talked into coming back to the program where he played quarterback, where he was a hero. And he's going to try to save the program. And Scott Frost was in that same position just a few years ago, and now one game into the season, and Scott Frost has got to be wondering about whether or not he's going to does he make it through the year. College football coaches generally don't get fired in the middle of the season, but he's got to be feeling the heat already, because that was not pretty. In Hawaii, man, it's tough. What happened at the end of Todd Graham being there? So many players left. So many more players were unhappy.
Yeah.
Chang has his work cut out for him, clearly. And hopefully he will have a little more success than Scott Frost has had, or have that success more quickly, because things are not looking good in Lincoln, even after just one game. I want to do a very, very quick Big Red Bears report. We are going to do this even though their season doesn't start for another couple of weeks until September 17th. For those of you who are new here, the Big Red Bears report refers to Cornell football. My nephew, Drew Powell, is a running back on Cornell's football team. He got 2 carries last season. He's in line to get many more carries than that this season.
That's good.
But there is news. It's not terrible. He's getting plenty of reps in preseason camp. Last week, he broke the ring finger on his left hand in practice, and really just a break down here where your ring would be. A doctor said he did not need surgery. That would not necessarily help him. He was in a cast immediately, and he's going to take 6 to 8 weeks to heal. Now, I mean, and you look at that and thinking, oh man, that's almost the whole season. That's a long time. But in the Ivy League, the timing actually works out in his favor. Season doesn't start till September 17th. By that point, he will have been in the cast for 3+ weeks already. So if we choose to be optimistic and say we're looking at closer to the 6-week range rather than the 8-week range for recovery and return to practice and playing, 6 weeks would be back in time for the Harvard game, which is the first weekend in October. That's actually their national televised game this season. Harvard goes to Cornell. It's on ESPN on Friday night. So he could be back by then. And even if he's not, even if it's 8 weeks, he's still there for half of the season. So, I mean, it sucks that he has his broken hand, because he was making good progress in practice, but he should be back well before the halfway point of the season. And I know that we are going to be looking forward to that almost as much as he will be. So,
get well soon.
Yeah, get well soon. And we're still going to follow Cornell once their season starts. Not expected to do much, as was the case last year, but they have a streak of finishing better than the preseason projections. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. My nephew is fired up, or he was until he broke his hand.
Yeah.
AJ is also fired up.
As always.
As always. From California, I believe, where he was having a hard time converting West Coast time to East Coast time and figure out when all the games that he wants to talk about are going to happen.
Because math is hard.
Because, as we said, math is hard.
I think we've determined our theme for this episode. Math is
clearly,
hard.
Clearly.
Yes.
It shouldn't be hard for him, though. He's not a journalist. I don't know what.
Yeah, really.
What he's struggling with there. Well, we'll figure that out at some point.
He is a communications major, though. So.
Well, okay, you're right. I think that counts. I think that puts
journalism adjacent.
Yeah, and that puts him into the math struggle category. Here he is, all the way from California, with his first Group of 5 report of the 2020 season. AJ, go ahead.
Hey, everybody. It's time. We didn't really get to do this during week 0, but we're here. It is week 1 of the 2022 college football season. It is your Group of 5 Western team, any other teams I really feel like putting in here, preview for week 1. Let's dive in. We have a lot to talk about. On Thursday, 10 p.m. Eastern, Pac-12 Network, so you probably won't see it, Northern Arizona at Arizona State. Arizona has 3 football teams. Everybody sees Arizona and Arizona State. But NAU is one of the 3 major teams. It is funded just like the other 2. They just happen to play FCS football. They're a very good FCS team. And both of the Power 5 Arizona teams are not good. Arizona is bad. And Arizona State is currently dealing with a whole bunch of concern around Herm. They're probably going to fire him. They're probably going to fire the AD. It is a fantastic job, and you're going to see a whole lot of big names put next to it. But for right now, there's a whole lot of waiting for the NCAA to kind of say, hey, here's your scholarship bans, here's this, here's that, before they'll let anybody go. This is an upset alert. Northern Arizona has done this before. They did it to Arizona a few years ago. I would not be surprised if they did it to Arizona State this year. Next, we have Portland State at San Jose State at 10:30 p.m. on the Mountain West Network. This was mostly just to say that the Mountain West has a network, which just means that there is a video player on their website, themw.com/watch. Portland State is a pretty good FCS team. And San Jose State is not a terribly good FBS team. So this is another upset alert. But again, this is week 1. We don't know anything about these teams. They could be completely different from last year. But keep an eye on this one. This one might be fun if you're looking for something on Thursday night. Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, FS1. It's Illinois at Indiana. Now, I know that I said this is the Group of 5 report. This is the Mountain West. This is the Pac-12. It's real sickos hours over here, is what I'm saying. You know how people are like, oh man, I would love to just watch some football. It's like May, and they're like, oh man, I'm really into just watching some football. Here's Illinois, Indiana. Enjoy. You asked for this. 10 p.m. Eastern, ESPN, TCU at Colorado. Sonny Dykes is the new head coach in TCU, replacing Gary Patterson. Gary Patterson, semi-famously, is now on the Texas staff. I'm interested to see how he does, because Gary Patterson, towards the end of his tenure at TCU, was very defense heavy. They ran a 4-2-5 defense. It was kind of his calling card. But Sonny Dykes comes in and is a point scorer. He is a touchdown haver. He is a field goal kicker. My man does not want to defend against points. He's just trying to score more than the other guys. So how does that mentality change? How does the talent switch from side to side in terms of that mentality? I'm very interested to see that. Also, Colorado. You had that weird 2020 pandemic season where you made it to the Pac-12 championship game. That's a thing that happened. Do it again. Try it again. Maybe be better. You had a really rough 2021. Let's see if that 2020 wasn't just a weird pandemic fluke. Saturday. It's the very first Saturday of the season. Feels great to be here. Let's go ahead and check the schedule. Noon, FS1, South Dakota State at Iowa. Hey, Iowa. You good? because no, you don't schedule anything with Dakota in the name. That's usually a pretty good way to not get everyone to laugh at you to start the season. South Dakota State, basically, if there's anything north or south and state or not state, as long as Dakota is in the name, it is a very good FCS team. And Iowa, you had an up year last year. This is going to be another mid-year of Iowa football, and this might not end well for you. We're all going to enjoy laughing at this, won't we? 12 p.m., ESPNU, UNC at App State. I am so damn excited for this one, mostly because UNC did not look good last week. And they were playing Florida A&M, FAMU. The problem is FAMU had 20 missing players for various reasons and almost canceled the game, but the players chose to play instead. And UNC did not look great, and now they get to go to Boone to go get stomped into the foothills. Mac Brown is going to have to leave to catch a flight mid-game is all I'm saying. This should be fun. 3:30 p.m., Houston at UTSA on CBSSN, the Network of Champions. Houston's playoff run begins now. They have to beat UTSA. They have to go undefeated. They are a G5 team, but UTSA is a strong G5 team to start the season. They are going to San Antonio in the Alamo Dome for this, so this should be a super fun game. I'm just very excited to see, Houston, UTSA, and Texas Tech, all three of these teams that are not typically who you expect to see at the top of the list in terms of Texas schools, really playing it out to see kind of who can make their way out of the G5 and some of the Big 12 from there. 3:30 p.m., Big Ten Network. North Dakota at Nebraska. You remember how I said don't schedule anything with Dakota in the name? Hey, Nebraska, maybe don't. Just don't. You flew all the way to Ireland to lose to Northwestern. You didn't have to do that. You could just, they got direct flights from Lincoln to Chicago, I'm pretty sure. You didn't need to go all the way to Ireland to get your tails kicked in. Why were you kicking an onside kick when you're up 11? Who thought this was a good idea? Do you practice this play? Apparently not. I really want North Dakota to come in and just absolutely annihilate Nebraska. Because then Nebraska fans are going to pick Scott Frost up and they're going to put him on the bus with North Dakota and let that bus drive all the way back to Grand Forks so that Scott Frost can never be seen again. They're not happy right now. They did not want to lose to Northwestern. And now they get their butts kicked in potentially by an FCS opponent. Whoops-a-doodle. 7 p.m., ESPN Plus, Army at Coastal Carolina. This is that pure, uncut G5 stuff that I love watching college football for. It is a travesty that this game is on ESPN Plus. This is a paywalled game. This should be on the main ESPN feed. You know what's on the main ESPN feed? Utah at Florida. You want to see a dead body? Don't worry about it. Utah's going to whomp Florida. Put Army at Coastal on the main feed, ESPN, you cowards. We want traditional option football versus new option football because this is a true old versus new situation. Coastal has made its name on running the triple option, but also having Grayson McCall, who is a very good quarterback, to pass out of that. They do a ton of tight end passing. They do a ton of throws out to the flat. This is effectively the modern option. So seeing that against the true triple option is kind of amazing. So how does this work? How does this stand up? I'm very excited for this. 7:30 p.m. on the SEC Network, Utah State at Alabama. Utah State was down by 2 touchdowns to UConn to start the game. And then they came back and won, and it was fine. But you can't do that against Alabama. There's a lot of feeling in SEC territory that Bama is going back into their we're bigger and better and now you die mode of just slowly grinding teams into paste. They have 2 of the best linebackers in the country. Will Anderson is a true Heisman favorite and like one of the first defensive players to potentially get a true look at the Heisman since Desmond. And they have a defensive line that doesn't move. Good luck, Ags. 7:30 p.m., CBS Sports Network, the Network of Champions, SMU at North Texas. This should be pointsy. This should be. SMU has Rhett Lashley. He was formerly at Miami. He was their offensive coordinator there. He has been on some big staffs, putting up big numbers. This should be pointsy. And if you need an eyeball cleanser from Alabama grinding Utah State into the ground, this is the way to do it. Idaho at Wazoo, 9:30 p.m. Pac-12 Network. This is a low-key, super mean rivalry that no one knows about because it's way up in the northwest corner. They're 10 miles from each other. This is a true backyard brawl. WVU and Pitt are further apart. You could walk between these universities. They have a history of hate. They've been playing each other for centuries. I don't expect any upsets because Idaho's not terribly good, but this is just fun to watch for rivalry purposes. 10:30 p.m. ESPN, Boise State at Oregon State. This isn't your dad's Oregon State. 3 years ago, this was an instant win for Boise, but not anymore. Boise's looked off in the last few years. They're still the class of the Mountain West, but they're not the clear dominant winner that they used to be, and they're certainly not scaring too many Power 5 teams anymore. Oregon State is okay to good now. This should be really good. And finally, midnight on the Team One app or somewhere on the internet, WKU at Hawaii. Hawaii came out strong last week. The fans were fired up. Everybody was real geeked. They scored a touchdown. They're up 7-0. And then it all went wrong, and Vandy beat the brains in. My beloved Bows, they need a bounce back. Western Kentucky might be the team to help. They didn't look terribly good against Austin Peay, but there was also a monsoon, so maybe they're better than that. Go Bows. This has been your Group of 5 Week 1 report. There was a lot in here, but they also have a lot of games this week. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, AJ. There's, as we said, there's stuff going on all weekend. And clearly AJ is gonna be spending a lot of time in front of the TV. Not that that's unusual.
Right. No, you're gonna have to like plan out. This is a long weekend, right? Of football, and you're gonna have to like plan out like your caffeination strategy versus your beverage strategy. Like, you know, staying up late for some of the late games. Like, when do you have that caffeine? Like, the math is hard. You got to start working on that. You know, figuring all that out.
Yeah. The Labor Day weekend has become like its own like little mini bowl season.
Yeah.
Because it is 5 straight games or 5 straight days, Thursday through Monday, and there are some fun games, there are some weird games, there are just some cursory games, and then but there's good stuff there too.
Yeah.
You folks, you're going to need 2 TVs on Thursday. I don't want to give anything away, but we're going to tell you that right now. And basically it goes. The Monday night game is sort of, but you know, clearly compelling stuff all the way through the weekend, at least through the Sunday night game. And we're going to talk about all of them. We're not going to talk about all of them. We're going to talk about several of them, and we're going to get started with that. I had one brief note as we begin. The old timers with the Carla and Crappy show may recall that any rankings we reference are from the Associated Press media poll. We use those until the college football playoff rankings are released, and then we use the CFP rankings for the duration of the season. Without further ado,
here we go.
Did I explain to you why the new name for the former Mustard Bowl, the otherwise known as the stadium down the street from where I live?
I don't know if you did or not.
I don't know that. This is Acrisure has something to do with insurance. No one's ever been able to explain this to me, and I was looking for an insurance reference that would be either funny or local, or hopefully both. What I came up with, and the Mustard Bowl, formerly known as the Mustard Bowl, formerly known as Heinz Field, now officially known as Acrisure Stadium, will forever be known on this program as Ned Ryerson Stadium. Do you know who Ned Ryerson is? Okay, that you do. Good. All right. If you don't know who that is, folks, you need to go watch Groundhog Day.
Yes.
Several times. Trust me. That's where we begin. 7 p.m. Thursday at Ned Ryerson Stadium in lovely Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and on ESPN. I'm really stoked for this. This is the return of the Backyard Brawl. West Virginia at number 17 Pitt. Pitt is favored by 7.5 points. As AJ pointed out last week, the AJ Fun indices are all pretty standard because no one really knows what to expect.
Right.
But just for reference, the over under the AJ Fun Index on this one is 51 points. Carla, I mean, you're a Penn Stater.
Yes.
No love for Pitt, but as a Western Pennsylvania college football fan, it's got to be pretty cool to have the Backyard Brawl coming back, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're going to talk. The next thing we're going to talk about is a game that I have a lot of interest in, right? Because Penn State also opens on Thursday night.
Yep.
And these games are on. This is why we're going to need 2 TVs, right? Because these games are on within an hour of each other. There is not a lot that would pull me away from Penn State opening night road game, conference game. Backyard Brawl might be really close.
Ooh.
Because it's tradition.
Yeah,
right? Like there's something to be said about the tradition. And the only thing that would make this game even better is if it was in Morgantown. Like if this was in Morgantown, like I am all in, and I've got 2 screens going during this game.
Sloppy, loud. Oh my God.
Couch burning,
the
whole wonderful beauty of it.
My folks went to an Ohio State opened a season in Morgantown. This is years ago. And my folks went to the game. They are driving towards the stadium, apparently within a sort of reach of Fraternity Row. And at some point, my dad realizes that an empty bottle of Jack Daniels has been thrown at his car. Did not connect.
Okay.
Didn't break in a point where it's any danger for the tires, but he decided he needed to hurry up and get to where it was he was going, because that part of Morgantown was not especially friendly.
Yeah. Totally get that. But like, this is what college football is all about, right? We haven't played this game in over a decade. And it is just exciting. It's the same thing. Like I wish Penn State and Pitt would play each other every year.
Yes.
Like it just needs, like, some of these tradition games need to come back, and I'm just absolutely stoked that this is one of the tradition games that has come back, even if it's just a short stint. Football game wise, I mean, the atmosphere, hopefully, and it's tough. I mean, Pitt games at whatever the stadium is called now just don't really have the atmosphere that they used to have, which is why I wish this game was in Morgantown. But you have to hope that there's going to be some sort of atmosphere in this game. With it being a tradition coming back, fingers crossed that it's actually there. There's a lot of new stuff going on. Like if you look at just the football game piece, like there's a lot happening here. And what's really fascinating about this whole thing is that we were actually ending up in a duel of 2 former USC quarterbacks.
Right.
Pitt's adjusting to life without Kenny Pickett, who actually still kind of lives in the same stadium. I really hope that Progressive takes the Baker Mayfield thing and turns it into a Kenny Pickett thing, because he kind of has really lived in that stadium for the last 4 years now, 5, right?
I don't think should they just get him an apartment there? I mean,
he should have a condo on North Shore.
No, he should have a condo in the damn stadium. He's been there for the last 18 years, and presumably will be there for a while longer.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So Pitt's adjusting to life without Kenny Pickett, without wide receiver Jordan Addison, who actually, funny enough, transferred to USC.
Hello.
Yes. And offensive coordinator, right? Mark Whipple. We talked about him already, who went to Nebraska. He had a fun time in Ireland. But Pitt gained from USC Kadon Slovis.
Yes.
Who might be the most Pittsburgh name ever for a quarterback. Like, I love the fact that the Panthers are going to have a quarterback with the last name of Slovis. Jadon Slavis. I hear it now. All right. Pitt also has some real stability at running back.
Yes.
And the Pitt defensive line should be just as good as they were last year. Right.
Absolutely.
So Pitt's going to be good. Are they going to be New Year's 6 good? Don't know. Still yet to be determined. The ACC is kind of a toss up. So maybe. But Pitt's going to be in the conversation. West Virginia had some real trouble being consistent on offense last year. That problem should be resolved because they brought in probably the bigger name, former USC quarterback in JT Daniels. JT Daniels has been a journeyman, right? So he started at USC, he went to Georgia, got hurt at Georgia. I remember those conversations about JT Daniels at Georgia, thinking that he was going to be the one that was going to help Georgia get to the national title. JT Daniels gets hurt. Stetson Bennett comes back in, and little, the guy that
the guy I said over and over and over will never take Georgia to a national
title game.
championship.
Yeah, exactly. We both thought that because we're like, he doesn't have the stature. He can't do it.
Great story, but no.
He did it. And so JT transferred and he ended up at West Virginia. Interestingly enough, with his former USC offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell.
Mm-hmm.
So he's reunited with the guy that he started his career with. That's going to be really fascinating to watch this year at West Virginia. Yeah. However, the big challenge with West Virginia is their offensive line. They just didn't really do a lot last year. Like, are they going to be able to give JT Daniels some time? Mm-hmm. We'll really see what Daniels is like as a quarterback, maybe, finally, hopefully. Yeah. With getting some consistent starts. This game's really intriguing. It's going to be it's a rivalry game. It's going to be closer than it should be. I think Pitt has the better pieces of a team right now. They have more of the complete package this early in the season. So I'm going to give the edge to Pitt, also playing at home. If this game was in Morgantown, I wouldn't be surprised to see West Virginia pull off the upset here. But this game's going to be real close, real tight, real ugly, and a whole lot of fun. But I think Pitt wins.
I'm glad you mentioned the switch here that USC gets Jordan Edison, Pitt gets Keaton Slovis. I'm not sure that's a fair trade. I think maybe USC should have thrown in a late round draft pick or something to sort of even that out, but
or a bag of balls or something.
Something like that. But I also for this game, I don't know that it's going to need to be that much. Pitt in general is not. It doesn't need to rely on the pass as much as it did, or as much as it could. With Pickett taking the snaps. You mentioned the running backs. They have like 15 or 16 of them. They just like rotate them in and out. It's not good for stats, certainly. Right. But if you want fresh guys running the football, their platoon system worked out pretty well last year, and I think they will lean on that a little bit more heavily this time. You also mentioned WVU's offensive line. This may be like where the game turns, because that's Pitt's strength. Right. The defensive line. Maybe you can include that to the front seven. That's going to make things really tough. And for Mr. Daniels, he may not get a chance to show off because he's running for his life for much of the night. As you said, it's a rivalry game. Rivalry games are weird. Yes. I would think about this a lot harder if it was in Morgantown. But being that it's in the Ned Ryerson Stadium, bang, I think Pitt will win a game that's probably tighter than it should be. So, but yeah, Backyard Brawl is back, and we'll see what happens. Are they playing in Morgantown next year?
I think so. I think it's at least a home and home.
Okay, that's
I'll have to check.
That'll be exciting. That will be exciting. This game, Carla, could be exciting in a way that you don't want it to be. 8 p.m. on Thursday on Fox, Penn State at Purdue. Penn State is favored by 3.5. The AJ Fun Index is 52.5. No. I am going to do this one first because we typically take our teams after the other person is talking. I want to. There's no way that Penn State is really as bad as the last couple seasons have turned out. There are problems, a ton of injuries. Talent on the offensive line has been rough. But I'd be hard pressed to come up with a team that has had to cope with just so much weirdness and weird finishes to games. I hope, knocking on wood somewhere, that is turned. They're healthy. They have a quarterback, an experienced quarterback. He's going to be starting his third year, I believe, as a starter.
But it's like 14th year on campus.
Well, sure. Yes. Yeah. Clifford is one of those guys.
Add him to the list. Still at Penn State, Sean Clifford.
The line should be better. Experience will do that for you. And of course, the Penn State's always helped by the fact they have one of the best defenses in the conference. Purdue is not inexperienced. Purdue, Aiden O'Connell is a weird looking dude who has been the starter at Purdue for a long time. They have a very good, very experienced offense. And if you don't believe me, ask Tennessee from the bowl game last winter. They have talent on defense. They're not defensive world beaters, but they can do enough to be a pain. And speaking of atmosphere, Purdue in a night game, that can be an uncomfortable place to play. And you can ask the 2019 Ohio State Buckeyes about how that goes, or maybe it was 2019. You can ask me because I was there, and oh boy, that Purdue just smoked Ohio State that night. I'm gonna pick Penn State. I would not. This is going to be a tight game. It's really going to be a tight game. And folks, do not be surprised. I would hesitate to call a Purdue win in this an upset. Who made your schedule, Carla? Why do you have to do this on week 1?
I know, right? Like the last couple of years, we've had just these brutal week 1 games. I think the only thing that could possibly be worse if this was a game at Iowa at night. I think that might be a little bit worse, because as weird as things can get, yes, West Lafayette in a night game, particularly if they call a blackout. And I haven't seen if they have, but they'd be stupid if they didn't. That can be weird, but not quite as weird as what things that go on in Ames, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Or in Iowa City. So yeah, there's but yeah, night games anywhere in the Big Ten West tend to be a little bit uncomfortable, regardless of where your team is standing. The thing that I like about this game, as the thing that I take solace in as a Penn State fan going into this game, is the fact that yes, we do have a very experienced quarterback who is used to handling these kinds of situations. Yes. And if there was ever a time for Clifford to step up and lead this offense, it's going to be this week, right? To really kind of to rope all of that in. Yes, the Penn State defense should be good, but there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of turnover here. Lost 6 starters to the NFL. And so they should be good. But there were some questions on defense last year in a couple of situations, and so you're really just kind of looking for that defense to kind of solidify and step up. The other good thing is that, yes, Purdue's offense can be a juggernaut, but it's kind of a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
It's stop O'Connell, right? They don't really have a run game, which is not what we think about when we think Purdue. We think ground and pound, and that's not who Purdue is anymore. Purdue is we're going to pass the ball first. He's putting up 400 plus yards a game passing on average. They have 12 transfers on the roster, including 2 former Iowa wide receivers. Eek. Which is not something to take comfort in. So for me, the big question is can the Penn State defensive front get enough pressure on O'Connell? That's the key to winning this game. Can they make O'Connell run for his life? Because if they can do that, then they can slow down that Purdue offense long enough that they'll be able to pull away with the win. Because I think the Penn State run game will be able to kind of balance out some of the Purdue defense. Okay. I think that's a possibility, but the Penn State defensive front is going to be the key to whether or not they win this football game. I really think, and whether or not they can do that. Of course, I'm a Penn State fan. I'm going to take Penn State, but again, this game will be too close, too late in the game. Uncomfortable is a very good word for this game. Yes. Okay. So thank goodness, nothing like 2 nail biter games to open our season happening at the same time.
I am fortunate that I don't have to work on Friday, so I will be up.
Ooh, I don't either.
But hey, there you go. Backyard Brawl on the little TV. And once Penn State gets started and that one, and It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to Thursday evening. I'm also looking forward to Saturday, and we'll get to that. Not just for my game, although that's probably the one that I'm going to actually get to see. But good stuff coming on Saturday, 3:30 on ABC. Number 11 Oregon versus number 3 Georgia. I say versus because it's at a neutral field, as Crappy makes air quotes, in the Benz Bowl in Atlanta. So yeah, Georgia's not technically at home. They are favored by 17, the Bulldogs are, and the AJ Fun Index is a remarkably consistent 53. I think we've had 53,
52 and 51, I think.
52 and a half, 51. Yeah. You are sensing a pattern here. Carla, what do you think about this one?
Okay, first of all, the line is absurd.
Okay.
Because so you look at this and you look at all the previews heading into this game, and you kind of get that whole idea of, Oregon doesn't have a chance in this game. It's essentially a home game for the Dogs. We said all of that last year.
We did.
and you kind of remember how that turned out.
I do.
Yeah, because Oregon came in and beat Ohio State in the shoe, and it's the exact same situation here.
Mm-hmm.
The exact same situation. Oregon's strength is in the trenches. We saw it last year. A lot of that strength is returning this year. Offensive and defensive fronts might be some of the best in the country, particularly the defensive front. The defensive front could be ranked. And we talk about Georgia, we talk about their defense.
Right.
So I also think the AJ Fun Index is too high in this game.
Clearly, yes.
I take the under all day. Because both of these teams, even though we tend to think of them both as being high octane offenses, no, the strength of both of these teams is their defense.
Yes.
And it's what won Georgia a national title last year, and it's what kept Oregon in games that they probably had no business being in. Challenge with Oregon last year is that they didn't have enough consistency on offense. They hope that has changed. Because they brought in a quarterback by, that we love to talk about here. Former Auburn QB, Bo Nix. Now, he hasn't officially been named the starter yet, which is interesting. But odds are likely that he will factor into this offense. And so Bo Nix is going to a team that actually has an offensive front. I mean, he's got to be grinning, right? Because all he did was run for his life at Auburn.
Right.
So what will Bo Nix be like as a quarterback when he actually has time to throw? We've never seen it, so it's going to be real interesting, to see how this all plays out for him. Here's the challenge on the Georgia side, though. And I kind of feel bad for Georgia a little bit here, because I kind of feel we're heading into Georgia. Georgia's sitting in most polls as the third best team in the country. And you're like, oh, how can we feel bad for Georgia? Because nobody's really and I'm stealing some of this from our friend of the show, Braden Gall, who actually said something on his show this week, on his podcast, about how he thinks that Georgia is underrated.
Okay.
Entering the season, that everybody's talking about Alabama and Ohio State, and nobody is really factoring in the fact that Georgia could play in this mix. Now everybody's got Georgia in the playoff. But nobody's really giving them a legitimate conversation about defending a national title.
Right.
And I kind of feel like last year we said, Georgia, this is your year, and that we kept getting bit by that, right? The whole same thing we used to do. It feels like this is a Clemson redo, right? Clemson, this is your year. And then they would Clemson all over themselves. And
at some point last year, we actually discussed whether or not Georgia-ing should be a thing,
right?
Because it had happened with remarkable consistency.
Yeah.
That they would get to at some point a game where they stumble in one that they should not have, and the chances of a really good team to win a national title just kind of went down the toilet. So yeah, that was a real thing. And
yeah, and even after Clemson won a national title, the very next year we were like, okay, but are they legit? We were having those questions about they won the national title, but are they going to contend this year? And I feel like we're having those exact same conversations this year about Georgia, right? But you look at them, can they contend again after losing a bunch of talent to the draft? But their stupidly good defense seems to have reloaded, and they've still got Stetson Bennett under center.
Yes.
This is still going to be a darn good football team. this is going to be a wildly entertaining game. Take the under all day. I think Georgia gets the edge here because they are playing essentially at home.
Yes.
And Oregon has to fly all the way across the country for the second straight year to start a game or to start a season.
Mm-hmm.
But Oregon pulled it off last year. I would not be stunned if Oregon does something real stupid and beats Georgia. I don't think it's going to happen. I think I'm picking Georgia to win this game, but I am not going to be surprised one iota if Oregon messes around and wins this game.
Okay. Quick, go take Oregon in the points, maybe, because I agree that 17 is a bit much. Also the under, because no, these guys aren't going to get. This is not Chip Kelly coaching Oregon. Right. This is not going to get to 53 points. We love us some Bo Nix. I wonder. The other really notable new guy in Eugene is Dan Lanning, who just came from where did he come from? Georgia, where he was defensive coordinator.
It's a good point.
So does that help? It may, although Georgia has a new defensive coordinator. So we'll see how that goes. But or is he just like pooping himself because the guys that he has recruited, he knows what he's going to be facing.
Yeah.
In the Benz Bowl. I am curious about Bo Nix, and to see what he can do with the solid offensive line, and he will have that. We've seen him. We've been on him since he was a true freshman at Auburn. Yep. We've seen him play some amazing games. We've seen him do some remarkably dumb stuff, and we've seen him a lot just kind of in survival mode because he never really had the offensive line that you would think that Auburn could provide for him. Big thing here is Georgia's defense. I know, there's so many draft picks that they lost from last year's team, but that doesn't seem to bother Kirby and Dan Lanning, who probably landed some of these guys who will be taking over those spots on this weekend and this year. That defense will continue to be absolutely lights out. I think a slow-paced game means Oregon could be in it late, and maybe in it through the whole game. Oregon could win this game, but I really think the stuff that you mentioned. You've got the quarterback who just won the national championship has returned. He has proven me wrong pretty handily, and
so me too.
Yeah. So there's no reason. This is a little bit like what we say about Alabama. There's no reason not to pick them. And even if they don't actually win the title, it's like, okay, they're there again. I have no reason to think that Georgia's defense, especially, isn't going to play at the level that they did last year. And then you've got an offense that runs and scores. You've got a guy who's proven he can run the team. So I would expect Georgia to win this, and then you add in the thing of the home field ish, and that would be the pick for me. Also at 3:30 on Saturday, this one is on the worldwide leader, number 23 Cincinnati at number 19 Arkansas. The Pulled Piggies are favored by 6. Take a guess at the AJ Fun Index.
52.
52 is correct.
Is it?
It is. What do you think about this one?
We've been talking about teams adjusting to life without their star quarterbacks, and Cincinnati is another one of those teams. Having lost Desmond Ridder, and their kind of remarkable run last year into the playoff. Cincinnati's offensive line should be really, really good this year again. But there are a lot of questions elsewhere, particularly in the secondary on defense. Lost a lot of talent there. I think Cincinnati looks like they're going to be a really good team again this year. Are they playoff contention good? Probably not.
Right.
But they're definitely going to be in the mix for a conference title. They're definitely going to be in the mix for a substantial bowl game, I think. But there's a lot of questions there. This game in particular is interesting because the roles are reversed a little bit here. Cincinnati last year kind of claimed the hearts of the national landscape in college football, right? When they made that remarkable run, and like suddenly people who had never followed Cincinnati football are rooting for them in the playoff. Arkansas wants to claim some of that, right? Arkansas used to be a team that we talked about quite frequently in the 90s in SEC football.
Or earlier, before your time, when they're in the Southwest Conference. And that was Lou Holtz was there for a few years, and had some really good teams.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas used to be in the national conversation year in and year out. It was consistent. They're putting the pieces together in Fayetteville. Last year, the Hogs led the SEC in rushing. Which is a remarkable stat when you think about the other teams that are in the SEC, right? They're a ground and pound team, 100%. They're a ground and pound team, but they're going to look to exploit the challenges that Cincinnati has in the young secondary to open up their offense a little bit, to give some room for that run game. Arkansas's defense is also really good, which is not necessarily great news for a new starting quarterback, right? And they're playing at home. So I'm going to take the Hogs in this game. It might be a little bit wide. I feel like this could be a little bit of a wider margin here. But don't count Cincinnati out by how they perform in this game. I still think Cincinnati is going to be in the conversation, not in the playoff conversation, but they're going to continue to be in the top 25 conversation throughout the season. Don't immediately dismiss Cincinnati based on what happens in this game. This could be a real nice stepping stone for Arkansas, though, to kind of boost themselves back up into that national conversation. It should be interesting.
Okay. I got to give credit to Luke Fickell, and it's not just last season. He over the last couple years, he envisioned this sort of long game that ended with Desmond Ritter's career in Cincinnati ending in the playoff. And he's managing egos of veteran players. He's making sure that that there are realistic expectations, and that long game ended up where he wanted to be. Bigger test this year, because the guys that he's been working with, not everybody, but as you mentioned, especially guys in the secondary, certainly Desmond Ridder, you have to wonder if these guys have had a taste of the playoff, and now if the expectations are win an AAC championship and go to a good bowl game, is that enough? So
yeah, that's a good point.
Luke Fickell has some different kind of coaching to do this season. Perhaps he can exceed those expectations and get Cincinnati back to something close to where it was last year. I'm skeptical about that. But certainly I'm a fan. I would love to see him coaching at Ohio State at some point down the line. But that's a whole different discussion. The Piggies, who pigs suey? They have some of their own expectations to manage, because last year was really good. And that was for this team to do what it did, which is beating LSU, beating Mississippi State, winning the Texas State Championship, because they beat both Texas and A&M. And that's far and away the best that they've done since Bert was trying to eat everything in the state of Arkansas. They're in a tough spot because they're playing the SEC West, and we've talked in the past about Big Ten East versus SEC West. There are years where I would make the claim that Big Ten East is as good as or better, but right now, I did trying to climb into relevance in that division of that conference.
Yeah,
really hard. I think, however, they will open with a win against Cincinnati. They're at home. Cincinnati has lost what it's lost, and you don't really have a sense of what they're going to look like. All the best to Coach Fickell this season, but I don't think he's gonna pull off a miracle in Fayetteville this weekend. That brings us to 7:30 p.m. Saturday. The game is on ABC. Number 5, Notre Dame Fighting Irish at number 2, Ohio State. I will be there. My Buckeyes are favored by 17.5 points. This is the one game that of the games we were picking where the AJ Fun Index is actually bumped up towards something that might be fun. 59 points. What do you think?
we talked a little bit about this last week when we were talking about our playoff picks.
We did.
Notre Dame's going to be a good team.
Mhm.
They're going to be a very good team, and they're really easy to root for this year, which is, we talked about this. That's kind of doesn't compute in our brains.
I'm not sure that I agree, but okay.
You said you would agree after this week.
That's possible.
Did
I say Did I say that?
You did. You said after
During
week
the
one,
show?
during the show, you said after week 1 it would be easier to root for Notre Dame.
I gotta talk to me about that, because that's dumb.
Have a conversation with yourself.
Yeah, okay.
Marcus Freeman is a guy that I think a lot of people want to see succeed.
I do.
As a head coach.
Mhm.
And there's some really good pieces in place, right? He inherited his own defense, right?
Right.
That was kind of the beautiful thing about him getting promoted into the head coaching spot, was that everybody stayed, right? And so the defense that he's been working on for years, they're all still there. Notre Dame's defense is going to be really good. They have a lot of talent at wide receiver. They have that stupidly talented tight end, Michael Mayer, who's back. So there are a lot of really good pieces in place for the Irish. But a first-year head coach with a new quarterback facing one of the top teams in the nation on the road, that is a really tough ask for any team this early in the season. That's a really tough ask. Which is why I think Ohio State is going to win this game.
Okay.
Because the challenge for the Irish, and you'll have a lot more to say about this, I'm sure, because I know where your brain is here. We've done this show for too long. I know where it is. The Ohio State offense will be a problem for Notre Dame, because we saw flashes of brilliance and absolute insanity from that Ohio State offense last year, right? And a lot of those pieces are back. I read one preview that said you could make an argument. You can make a really good argument that the skilled players returning at Ohio State are the best in the country, top to bottom in all the skill positions. Offensive line is reloaded. Big challenge last year was that defense, right? And the progress has been made. And the one good thing is that you're going up against a team that we still have some questions. It's ranked number 5 in the country. I get that, but they still have some questions on offense, because this is the first time that this unit has worked together.
Yes.
Right. So if anything, that's, it would be different if Notre Dame was coming in with a quarterback that has been in the system for a while. Right. That's not necessarily the case in this game. So, Ohio State's playing at home. The one weakness that they may have, I think, can be overcome.
Okay.
Ohio State wins this game. It's a tight game. I think Notre Dame hangs around maybe until the fourth quarter. I think it's going to be a close game until the late stages, when finally that the line battle, I think, is eventually what's going to wear Notre Dame down. But yeah, I think the Bucks win at home, but it's closer than because that line is big.
It is.
I think the line is, I think the line is too big. It's gonna be a close game, but I think the Bucks win.
Okay. You guys may be able to actually hear me vibrating because of how stoked I am about this game. Here's what Notre Dame has. Notre Dame has a very good offensive line, as they have for the past several years. Michael Meyer is an all-world tight end.
Yeah.
The defense that Notre Dame has, can play well, and is talented. But I looked at their most recent game, which was the bowl game, the Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma State. That defense absolutely collapsed in the second half of that game, and took let a pretty healthy Notre Dame lead turn into a loss. Notre Dame also has a sophomore making his very first start at quarterback. Here's the thing that I did not realize until I just read it today. Since 2010, every single Notre Dame quarterback starting his first game has come away with a win. Did you know that? Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
I didn't either until today. That's what Notre Dame has. Here's what Ohio State has. Probably the best offense in the country. And that could be enough this weekend. We're going to talk about Ohio State's problem. It was defense. We don't know for sure what it's going to look like. Last year it did not look good. The secondary will be better. I think largely those issues were because of inexperience. All of those guys are back with a year under their belts. I'm not worried about them. I'm not worried about the defensive linemen because basically, as long as Ohio State has Larry Johnson coaching those guys, I'm not going to sweat it. The talent will be there, and LJ's will get them straightened out and working as they should be. That leaves us with the linebackers, and this is the thing that I noticed watching last year's Fiesta Bowl, which I've obsessively watched a couple times in the last couple weeks, especially in the first half when the Irish are really rolling. Jack Cohn, he of the 35-year-old college quarterback,
right,
made a pretty good living with underneath with short routes, with underneath passes, especially to the tight end. But there's some crossing routes, backs in the flat. The latter is not always a linebacker's responsibility, but you look at that and you think, okay, Ohio State's linebacker room was pretty thin last year, and it did not have the kind of talent that you would usually see there. Notre Dame could, if there haven't been significant improvements made in that unit specifically, Notre Dame could come up with a lot more offense than I'm thinking that they would. But what it comes down to is I don't think Notre Dame has. I mean, this could be just who's going to score more, and Notre Dame does not have the offense, I don't think, to keep up.
Yeah.
And that streak, it'll be an interesting game. I think. I'm going to be uncomfortable until early in the third quarter. And at that point, we're going to see the offense kind of pull away a little bit. And that streak of Notre Dame quarterbacks winning their first games will die an ugly death in Columbus on late on Saturday night. We have one more game to talk about. There will be two more games, Sunday night and Monday night. Monday's game is Clemson and Georgia Tech again at the Benz Bowl. It'd be fun if that game is competitive. I don't think it will be.
Yeah.
But yeah. But this one is really intriguing. Really intriguing. 7:30 on Sunday in the Superdome in New Orleans. Florida State versus LSU. The Tigers, as the guy from Massachusetts calls them, are favored by 3. The AJ Fun Index. You got a guess for this one?
Uh, 52.
51 and a half.
Okay.
51 and a half. Our first look at the Brian Kelly version of the Tigers. What do you think here?
What I think is really interesting about this game, because I was digging into a bunch of different game previews, there's absolutely zero consensus on how this game is going to go.
Okay.
Like,
yes.
It's almost 50-50 on who they're picking, which is interesting because if you look at the ESPN predictor, it's like a 72% chance that LSU is going to win the game. But when you read the previews, it's nowhere close to that, right?
And only 3-point favorites in ostensibly a home game.
Essentially a home game, which means it's essentially an even, right? Because 3 points is the home field. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how, because we really, we have no idea, right? To bring back our old tagline, we have no idea what LSU is going to look like. Absolutely none. Because there were so many changes and so many players moving around and new players in and new coaching staff in and players leaving. And we really don't have a grasp as to what LSU is going to look like. We know what Florida State looks like because we saw them last week. And I honestly think that that is a huge advantage to them. They got a game under their belts. Yeah,
but it's a game against, a 1AA school that, as you and I know, the Bobby Moe fans, they didn't pay a lot of attention to Duquesne at Florida State last weekend, but there was some cackling. I distinctly heard some cackling as Duquesne was shellacked in Tallahassee on last Saturday. So I don't. How much do you really know about Florida State after that?
They're going to run the football.
Yeah.
Because that's what they did consistently. And sure, is that a difference between an FCS school and an FBS school? Yeah, probably. But Florida State's been doing that for a while.
Yeah.
Right. They put up 400 yards on the ground, 33 first downs. Right. That's a good looking offense, even against an FCS team. Right. Because we had the conversation that could Duquesne, and this is a Florida State team that lost to an FCS team last year. Right.
They have been awful recently.
And so to be able to put together a really convincing game that they should win, put it behind their belts. They've gone through the routine of going through the game day stuff again. They have that and it was a ridiculous game day because it got delayed by lightning. And so they had to deal with all of that in their home stadium. I think that makes this a very even game, which is why I think nobody can pick who's going to win this. I think Florida State has been bad the last several years. I think the fact they got a confidence win under their belt, did everything right, did exactly what they were supposed to do, beat a inferior opponent. Just like we said, LSU shouldn't, or Florida State shouldn't overreact either way. Florida State's back. I do think it does give them a little bit of confidence going into what is essentially a road game for them. This is going to be a really interesting game. This is the flip a coin. I have no idea. The stat that I found that kind of helped me make my decision on why I think I'm going to pick LSU at home, even though I don't really know anything about them, is the fact that Florida State hasn't beaten an SEC opponent since 2017.
Okay.
And this is essentially a road game for them. Magic happens for LSU in that Superdome.
Yep.
We've seen it happen time and time again. And I think that's enough for me to say, I think LSU wins this game, but this is the biggest mystery for me of the weekend is this game. And I'm going to watch it just for the intrigue to see, is LSU going to be anything this year? We don't know. Is Florida State kind of starting to figure it back out again to maybe be a contender in the ACC? Don't know. We'll find out on Sunday night.
I don't have a lot to break down as far as Florida State goes. I did not see that game. I will say I'm skeptical about how much you learn about a D1 school when they're playing a D1 AA school. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that means. You are absolutely correct in that you're 1 week into a game routine. and there's a comfort there. There's a confidence there that those are real things, and those are good points. I don't know, however, if you can look at that game and say, oh yeah, but I'm not overreacting like a Florida State fan, but I don't know, you can look at that game and say, okay, tangibly better than they have been for however many past seasons they've had losing records.
Right.
We make fun of Brian Kelly a lot, and it's easy. And I just did it because, you know, the Massachusetts guy and the dumb thing where he's faking the Southern accent. But the thing is, and you know, in spite of the, you know, from jokes to outright skepticism about how the dude from Massachusetts, how straight-laced Brian Kelly is going to fit in Baton Rouge. He's won everywhere. He has won everywhere he's been. He's won at what is it, Grand Valley State or something? I don't remember that. I know at Central Michigan he did. I know at Cincinnati he did. That was enough to get the folks at Notre Dame to hire him, and he won there. Probably not to the degree that Notre Dame fans would want, but he brought the program back to national relevance. And it was not. Notre Dame did not matter as a football school for several years. So I don't think there's any reason at all why he's not going to do it there. And if you look, read an interesting column today comparing his situation to that of Nick Saban's when the LSU money whipped Michigan State head coach Nick Saban into coming south. And I think they said Saban was 8-4 in his first season at LSU. And I look at the schedule and think, well, okay. Even before you get into like the really difficult SEC West games, there's 5 wins, maybe 6 on here. And then, you know, he's going to have athletes. Do they buy in? You don't know yet. But I think Florida State will almost always have the talent to keep up with Texas A&M, to keep up with who knows, or Arkansas, to be competitive with Alabama. I think he could get to that point. He could get to a Nick Saban-esque first season at LSU. Mm-hmm. And if I'm looking at that schedule, I'm thinking Florida State is one of those wins. So I'm going with LSU. You know, Florida State, I have no idea what the state of Florida State's program is. I really don't. And this will do a lot more to determine what we know about them than last week's did. But I don't think it'll be enough. I think LSU is going to win this game ostensibly at home. Boys and girls, you can hear the Carla and Crappy Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and a variety of other podcasting hosts. You can watch us on YouTube or the show's Facebook page. If you like us, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. If you don't like us, mind your own damn business. Be sure to come back next week to see exactly how wrong we were. Carla, do you have a final thing?
I do have a final thing.
Hey,
it's that. One of the games that we couldn't squeeze in.
Okay.
Don't lose sight of number 7 Utah at Florida on Saturday night. I know there's a lot of things happening Saturday night, but that's a key game. We were talking about Utah potentially, particularly for me, because I picked them to go to the playoff, right?
Yeah.
So that's a game that Utah has to win, and I think Utah has to win with style points.
Okay.
To be able to make the case, to really make a strong case for playoff. The Swamp at night on a season opener. We want to talk about atmospheres. That's an atmosphere. Can Utah handle it?
It's okay.
We'll see. I think they will. But I think it's a game just to keep your eye on, in addition to the myriad of other games happening. But score watch that one.
I may be otherwise occupied.
You will be otherwise occupied, yes.
But no, I agree. That is an interesting matchup. Probably means more to Utah than it does to Florida at this point. Expectations with a brand new coach, albeit a guy who has crushed in the Sun Belt leading up to this year. So that'll be a fun game to watch. Maybe it'd be fair then. I don't know. My final thing, as you may notice, I am wearing, for those of you who are watching the video podcast, I am wearing a shirt that commemorates Ohio State's undisputed national championship in 1968. This shirt came from our friends at Home Field. And Home Field's Ohio State collection launched just a couple weeks ago. And I literally got this in the mail today.
Nice.
We got one for Kelly, with lyrics from Buckeye Battle Cry that she's really happy about. The fit is not. We discussed offline the fit for this, and it's okay. I am fat, and it's a little snug, and it's fine, but it's not uncomfortably so. So I am digging this, and there are probably more in my future. About 2 weeks before Ohio State's collection was released. And I want to acknowledge this. Home Field released a Penn State collection. Did you end up getting anything?
I haven't ordered anything yet, but I'm going to.
You've got your eye on something?
Yeah, I've got my eye on a couple things. Yeah.
Even without Carla's support, and I want to acknowledge this for the record. Even without Carla's purchase, Penn State on release weekend, whatever the time period Home Field defines that as, blew away everybody in terms of sales of stuff on release weekend, including Ohio State. And we're talking about alumni bases and fan bases that are of similar massive sizes.
Yeah.
Ohio State wasn't close.
I was stunned by that.
I was too. I think maybe one thing. Ohio State fans have had retro stuff available for years from Homage, which is a company that's based in Columbus. Good stuff, really good stuff. So did that dilute demand for Ohio State fans? I don't know. It didn't. It did not stop me. But I want to acknowledge, Carla, that in this instance, Penn State just absolutely buried my Buckeyes.
Which is interesting because when I look at the two Home Field collections, I actually think that Ohio State got the better collection. I think top to bottom, shirt design wise, I think the Ohio State collection, there's a lot more options. Penn State protects its brand too much. And so, that was what they were saying, was that it was really hard to get some of these retro designs approved to print. And I was kind of like, yeah, it's a good collection. That's the reason why I didn't buy right away. Because I wanted to think about it for a bit. I was like, it's a good collection, but it wasn't like the spectacular, oh my gosh, I have to have that shirt right now. Right. Which is
this one I was, that was me. When I saw this in a preview, I'm like, yeah, that's.
And I've seen that in other, Oregon State, when that collection was released, there were two shirts in that collection that I was like, ooh, that's really good. Right. Kansas State, same thing. It was like, ooh, there's a shirt there's of course, Oregon State, that's a long story. And AJ knows this, that I went to my high school mascot was the beaver, just like Oregon State. And so some of the stuff that had just the mascot on it kind of would be a throwback to high school for me.
Nice.
And so I was like, yeah, there's some pretty cool stuff there that I'm thinking about. If I place my Penn State order, I might also order an Oregon State shirt.
I still need to get, and I absolutely will do this. This was it's a specific date, but there was a Youngstown State surfing penguin shirt.
Yes. Yeah, the surfing penguins.
I need that one, and I will own it soon. I promise you that. The cool thing about this is, and I'm not sure what went into this decision, but after Ohio State's release weekend was over, Home Field said, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to keep stats and records. So basically, Penn State has won that championship without ever with no hope of anybody ever being able to catch it. So in perpetuity, Penn State are the Penn State is the home field T-shirt national champion for all time.
We
Cannot
are.
be touched. You are. Yes, you are. You
We should have
are.
a T-shirt to claim our T-shirt national championship.
Well, okay, it's actually a really good idea. and they're totally, that should totally exist.
Somebody call. Can we get home field on the phone?
Or someone. I have a T-shirt. So I can make that. Like, I don't know that I'm comfortable with that, but maybe I don't know. Never mind. I'm not gonna do that. But somebody should. Somebody totally should. Carla, this has been awesome.
We're back.
It is so much fun. We didn't get to do this last season with Ms. Ellie demanding your time and energy and all of that stuff.
Yep.
So yeah.
And then we had the pandemic the year before.
So those games were just weird, and we didn't ever. It was really angsty season. That was. But right now, we're back. Normal games are back. Ohio State's going to beat Notre Dame this weekend, and I don't think things could be happier as far as I'm concerned. So thank you very much. Cheers. Was that beer okay?
It's good. Yeah, it's Southern Tier. It's one of the holdovers from the summer trip home. So yes, hey, pumpkin spice lattes came out today. I'm still drinking summer beers. I don't care.
Excellent. Cheers to you. Thank you to AJ for once again for the GFI report, and thank you guys for watching, listening, all of that stuff. Please come back next weekend. We will see you then. Beat Michigan.